Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling the first part of a report from RPPL.
RPPL.
That's the Research Partnership for Professional Learning.
Okay.
They're doing some really fascinating work to figure out what really works when it comes to teacher training.
Yeah.
And I know you're eager to see what they've discovered.
Absolutely. I am too. It's exciting to see this kind of rigorous research, focused on something so crucial to education.
Right.
Yeah.
So RPPL, pronounced Ripple, by the way,
Okay.
is this collaborative group of researchers and organizations all dedicated to making teacher professional development more effective.
Right.
And this report dives right into some of the biggest myths surrounding professional learning.
Okay.
Like I've heard people say that PL is just a waste of time,
Yeah.
or that's only helpful for brand new teachers.
Yeah.
What are some of the other myths this report calls out?
Well, it tackles the idea that only specific, really intensive PL models actually work, which can make people think anything less isn't worth doing.
Oh, yeah.
And it also addresses the myth that you have to implement programs exactly as designed with no room for adjustments.
Okay.
These myths can have a real impact on how districts and schools approach teacher learning.
So they're setting the record straight right from the start.
Yeah.
But the report doesn't just debunk myths.
Right.
It also highlights what research actually says about effective professional learning.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like one of the biggest takeaways is that PL can significantly improve teaching and student outcomes, but only if it's done right.
Right.
What are some of the key features of effective professional learning that this report emphasizes?
Well, two major themes emerge:
Okay.
practice-based learning and social accountability.
Okay.
And I think the emphasis on practice is especially important.
Mm-hmm.
We've all sat through those workshops where you just listen to someone talk about teaching, but you never actually get to try out the strategies yourself.
Oh, totally. It's like learning to ride a bike by just reading about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this report really pushes for professional learning that's grounded in real-world application.
Mm-hmm.
Think about working with actual curriculum materials, practicing specific instructional techniques, and getting feedback from colleagues.
So less theory, more action. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But what about social accountability? What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's about creating structures that encourage teachers to implement what they've learned and hold each other accountable in a supportive way.
Okay.
This could involve things like peer coaching, where teachers observe each other's classrooms and provide feedback,
Okay.
or collaborative planning sessions,
Yeah.
where teachers work together to design lessons and share strategies.
I can see how that would help teachers stay focused and motivated, especially when they're trying to implement new practices.
Yeah.
The report actually mentions a real-world example of how RPPL research is being used to improve professional learning, right?
Yes.
Okay. It highlights how Teaching Lab, one of the organizations involved in RPPL, right,
is using these research findings to train school leaders in Chicago. They're using the insights about practice-based learning and social accountability to design and implement programs across the district.
That's encouraging. It's great to see research actually being put into action.
Yes.
Now, one of the big challenges with professional learning is making it relevant and effective for individual teachers.
Right.
I mean, teachers have different strengths, weaknesses, and areas where they want to grow.
Yeah.
How does the report address this idea of personalizing professional learning?
Well, it's a tricky balance, right? There are pros and cons to both standardized programs and highly individualized approaches.
Right.
And the report digs into this tension, highlighting that there's not a clear winner in the personalization debate.
So what are some of the key considerations when it comes to personalization?
Well, standardized programs are often more efficient and easier to implement on a large scale,
Right.
but they can miss the mark when it comes to addressing individual needs. Individualized approaches, on the other hand, can be incredibly effective, but they can also be expensive and difficult to manage, especially in large districts.
I can see how that would be a challenge.
Yeah.
It's like trying to tailor a suit for every single person in a city.
Exactly. And the report highlights another layer of complexity.
Okay.
Teachers and school leaders often have different views on what data should be used to determine professional learning needs.
So you might have a situation where a principal thinks teachers need training on a particular curriculum, but the teachers themselves feel like they need more support with classroom management or something else entirely.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that disconnect can create real challenges when it comes to designing and implementing effective PL.
Okay.
So the report explores a couple of potential solutions to this personalization puzzle. One is instructional coaching,
Okay.
which, when done well, has a strong track record of success.
I've heard a lot about coaching lately.
Yeah.
What makes it so effective?
Well, it provides teachers with individualized support tailored to their specific needs and goals.
Okay.
A good coach can observe a teacher's classroom, help them identify areas for growth, and then work with them to develop and implement new strategies.
But like any personalized approach, coaching can be difficult to scale and maintain quality.
Right. You need skilled coaches and a system for supporting them.
I'm also curious about the role of technology in personalized professional learning.
Okay.
Is the report optimistic about the potential of AI and other tech tools?
It is.
Okay.
The report highlights how some RPPL organizations are starting to explore the use of AI to provide personalized feedback and support.
Interesting.
For instance, Teaching Lab has an AI-enabled coaching platform that can analyze teacher-student interactions and suggest targeted strategies for improvement.
That sounds pretty cutting edge.
Yeah.
But are there any concerns about using AI in this way?
Of course. The report points out some shared worries about making sure these tools are equitable and used responsibly, especially when it comes to sensitive data. But the potential for technology to help us create more personalized and effective PL experiences is definitely something worth exploring further.
It seems like there's a lot of potential, but also a lot of careful consideration needed as we move forward with AI in education.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to professional learning resources.
Okay.
Even the best designed programs can't succeed without adequate funding and support.
Absolutely.
And the report dives into the financial realities of professional learning.
Okay.
It finds that while spending on PL has been increasing over the past few decades, there's still a huge amount of variation across districts. Some districts are investing significantly more than others.
Right.
And how that money is spent also varies widely.
Yeah.
So some districts are prioritizing professional learning more than others.
That's right.
And the report found some interesting patterns based on district characteristics. For example, larger districts and those in more rural areas seem to have different approaches to PL spending. That's intriguing.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what factors are driving those differences in investment.
Right.
Is it about local priorities, available funding, or something else entirely?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for more research to understand how resource allocation decisions are being made and whether those investments are actually leading to improved outcomes for teachers and students.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about spending money, it's about spending it wisely to make a real difference in the classroom.
Exactly.
And that's a point the report emphasizes. We need to be able to track the impact of PL investments and ensure that they're aligned with measurable outcomes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of practice-based learning,
Right.
social accountability, the challenges of personalization, and the role of resources. But this report isn't just about what we know about effective PL, it's also about how RPPL is doing research differently.
That's right.
No.
RPPL is trying to create a more collaborative and practical approach to research, bringing together researchers, professional learning providers, and school districts to work together.
So it's less about researchers studying PL from a distance and more about getting everyone involved in the process.
Exactly.
Okay.
They believe that this will lead to research that's more relevant, generalizable, and actionable instead of just evaluating specific programs.
Right.
They're trying to understand the broader design features of professional learning that work across different contexts.
That seems like a really valuable approach.
Yeah.
But these complex collaborations must come with their own set of challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the report is refreshingly honest about the hurdles they've encountered.
Okay.
For example, they describe a study that looked at how an intervention designed to shift teacher mindsets played out in different districts.
Okay.
They worked with Dr. Jason Okonofua, an expert in this area,
Right.
and tried implementing the intervention in diverse settings.
Okay.
From rural Arkansas to New York City.
That's a huge range. I can imagine there were some logistical challenges.
There were.
They found that coordinating research across so many different contexts and partners was more difficult than anticipated.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a reminder that even with the best intentions, these large-scale collaborations can be tricky.
So did they just give up on multi-location research altogether?
Not at all. Instead of abandoning it completely, they've actually expanded their research portfolio to include a wider range of approaches.
Okay.
In addition to those large-scale studies, they're now also doing more descriptive and qualitative research, which allows them to get a deeper understanding of how PL is playing out in real schools and districts.
So it's about using the right research method for the right question.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the report shares an anecdote about how TNTP, another RPPL partner, used feedback from a pilot study to modify their approach to a teacher expectations intervention.
Okay.
They realized that the timing of the intervention wasn't ideal,
Right.
so they adjusted it based on what they learned.
That's great. It shows they're willing to be flexible and learn as they go.
Yeah.
It seems like they're really committed to continuous improvement and using research to inform practice.
Absolutely. And that's what I find so impressive about our RPPL.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just generating research, they're actively using it to make a real difference in the lives of teachers and students.
So we've covered a lot of ground here in the first part of this report, focusing on RPPL's mission to improve teacher professional learning.
Yeah.
We've explored the myths they're debunking,
Right.
the key features of effective PL, the challenges of personalization, the importance of resources,
Yeah.
and their unique approach to research.
Yeah.
But there's still more to uncover, right?
There is. The report goes on to discuss RPPL's efforts to build a more robust research infrastructure, their work on equitable research practices, and some of their specific initiatives focused on math and ELA.
Okay.
But we can explore those in more detail later.
Sounds good. So after this deep dive into the first part of the report, what are some of the big takeaways that you think are most important for our listener to remember?
Well, I think what stands out to me is RPPL's commitment to bridging the gap between research and practice. They're not just studying professional learning.
Right.
They're actively working to make it more effective and equitable for all teachers.
And ultimately that benefits students.
Yeah.
Which is the goal of all this work.
Exactly.
Now, as we move on to the other sections of the report, I want to leave our listener with a question to ponder.
Okay.
Think about the professional development you've experienced in your own career. What elements have been most impactful?
Yeah.
And how might those experiences inform the design of future professional learning programs?
That's a great question to consider.
Yeah.
And it's one that RPPL is actively grappling with as they continue their work.
Okay, so we've explored the first part of the RPPL report, focusing on their mission and key findings about effective professional learning. Now let's shift gears a bit and delve into the second part of the report,
Okay.
where they talk about building a more robust infrastructure for research. It gets a little meta,
Yeah.
but I think it's crucial because how we study professional learning is just as important as what we learn from those studies.
Absolutely.
Right. And one of the big challenges they highlight
Yeah.
is the need for what they call research-ready data.
Okay.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, it boils down to this.
Okay.
Often the way data is collected in schools and districts isn't really designed to support rigorous research.
Right.
Maybe different schools are collecting data on similar things, but they're using different definitions or methods, making comparisons really difficult.
So it's like trying to compare apples and oranges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where RPPL comes in.
Okay.
They're trying to create a more standardized approach to data collection,
Okay.
specifically focusing on early literacy professional learning. To start, it's not about adding more data collection burdens,
Right.
but more about making the data we already have more useful for research.
So rather than having a bunch of different organizations collecting data in their own unique ways,
All right.
they're trying to create some common ground,
Yeah.
making it easier to compare findings across studies
Yes.
and draw broader conclusions about what works.
That's the idea.
Okay.
The report actually shares an example of this.
Okay.
They noticed that many organizations were already collecting data on things like teacher attendance at PL sessions or using classroom walkthroughs to gather information about instruction.
Okay.
But how this data was collected varied widely from group to group.
So even though two organizations might both be collecting data on, say, teacher collaboration,
Yeah.
they might be defining or measuring it in completely different ways.
That's right.
Which wouldn't exactly lead to reliable comparisons or findings.
Exactly. RPPL realized they needed a more systematic way to collect and analyze data if they wanted to really understand what makes professional learning effective.
Okay.
And they're walking the walk, too. They're actually piloting this shared measurement model across 6 different organizations, which is pretty ambitious.
Wow. That's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
If everyone's using the same yardstick, it's easier to see what's working and what's not.
Right.
It also seems like they're really thinking about how to make this work sustainable and scalable.
Yeah.
They mentioned a toolkit for district leaders and PL providers in grades 3-12.
Yes. It seems they're creating resources and structures that can be adapted and used in different contexts.
Okay.
After all, a one-size-fits-all approach to research probably wouldn't be very effective either.
So true. Now, when you're dealing with a lot of data, especially about teachers and students, privacy becomes a big concern.
Right.
How is RPPL addressing those ethical considerations?
Well, they're very aware of the complexities of data ownership and privacy. They know it's a major challenge, especially when you have data coming from teachers, school leaders, PL providers, and districts. It can get messy trying to figure out who owns what and who can share what.
I bet. And I imagine that those kinds of logistical issues can really slow down research.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But instead of just throwing their hands up, RPPL is trying to find creative solutions.
Okay.
They've developed a bank of agreement templates to streamline the process of data sharing
Okay.
and are being more strategic about what requires individual consent and what can be shared more broadly.
That's a clever way to balance the need for data with the need to protect privacy.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're really trying to be proactive and remove those roadblocks that can hinder research progress. And not just any research, but research that's truly equitable.
Right.
This report emphasizes their focus on equity throughout their work.
Yes, and I appreciate that they don't shy away from acknowledging that research can sometimes perpetuate existing inequities if we're not careful.
How are they trying to ensure that their research is actually promoting equity in professional learning?
Well, they're taking a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, they're being intentional about including teacher and student voices in their research design.
Okay.
It's one thing to study what we think is good for teachers and students,
Right.
but it's quite another to ask them directly about their experiences and what they need.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about valuing lived experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they actually did this.
Huh?
They conducted 2 equity-focused reviews of their learning agenda, one with a group of teachers and one with a group of students.
Interesting.
They wanted to hear firsthand about what these groups see as the most pressing needs and how PL can best serve them.
What an interesting approach. I'm curious, what did they learn from those conversations?
Well, some really valuable insights emerged.
Okay.
Both teachers and students stress the importance of professional learning that's flexible, relevant, and relationship-centered. It's not about checking boxes or sitting through hours of irrelevant training.
Right.
It's about building connections and feeling supported.
Okay, so quality over quantity seems to be a shared value.
Yeah.
Do they find any differences in perspectives between the teachers and students?
There were some interesting nuances.
Yeah.
Teachers were particularly concerned about the long-term sustainability of professional learning.
Okay.
They wanted to make sure that what they learned would be supported and followed up on, not just a one-off workshop.
Right.
They also wanted more say in selecting PL opportunities that aligned with their own goals and experiences.
Well, that's understandable. Teachers are the ones in the classroom day after day.
Yeah,
So their perspectives on what they need should definitely be valued.
absolutely.
What about the students? What were their priorities?
The students were particularly interested in how technology could be used to personalize professional learning and make it more relevant to their individual needs. It seems like they're open to exploring the potential of things like AI and digital tools to create more engaging and tailored learning experiences.
It's fascinating to see how these different perspectives can inform the design of professional learning.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that effective PL isn't just about what experts think is best, but about taking into account the needs and experiences of everyone involved.
Absolutely. And RPPL seems committed to doing just that.
Right.
They're using the feedback from those teacher and student conversations to shape their research agenda and develop more equitable practices.
Okay.
It's not just about what they study, it's about how they study it.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's about embedding equity into the entire research process.
Right.
And I have to commend them for their transparency. They're openly sharing their process, including the challenges they faced, so that others can learn from their experiences.
Yes, it's refreshing to see an organization willing to admit when they're still figuring things out.
Right.
It makes them more relatable and trustworthy. And it helps the entire field of professional learning research move forward.
Okay.
So we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still one section of the report left to explore.
That's right. In the final section, RPPL looks ahead to the future.
Yes.
They've learned a lot in these first few years, and they're using those lessons to shape their next steps. So the final section of this report is all about RPPL's vision for the future of their work.
Okay.
I'm curious, what are some of the key directions they're planning to focus on?
Well, they're doubling down on their commitment to teacher personalization and choice,
Okay.
recognizing that professional learning needs to be deeply relevant to individual needs and goals.
Right.
It's not enough to just offer a menu of options.
Yeah.
They want to create a system that truly empowers teachers to drive their own learning.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from a one-size-fits-all model
Right.
to a more customized approach. It seems like a natural extension of all the work they've been doing around personalized learning. Are there any other significant changes they're making to their research approach?
Well, they're also moving towards more place-based research,
Okay.
working directly with school districts to identify their specific challenges and co-designing studies that address those needs.
Okay.
They realized those large-scale multi-location studies,
Right.
while ambitious, sometimes lack the kind of deep contextual understanding that comes from working closely with districts.
It makes sense to bring research closer to the ground level,
Yeah,
where it can have a more direct impact.
exactly.
But doesn't that mean narrowing their focus a bit?
It does,
Okay.
but in a strategic way.
Okay.
Instead of trying to tackle everything at once,
Right.
they're honing in on specific content areas where they believe they can make the most significant contributions.
Which areas are they prioritizing?
Math and curriculum-focused professional learning are two big ones.
Okay.
They're launching a portfolio of studies in these areas, supported by a community of practice. And that shared measurement structure we talked about earlier,
Right.
this will allow them to gather more consistent data and make more meaningful comparisons across studies.
So it's about going deep rather than wide, focusing their efforts to build a more concentrated body of knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're also developing a toolkit of standardized data collection items that can be used across different studies and organizations.
So they're continuing to build on that foundation of research-ready data.
Yeah.
It's a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would pay off in the long run.
Absolutely.
And of course, they're not letting go of their commitment to equity.
Right.
They're continuing to refine their framework for promoting equitable research practices, ensuring that their work benefits all teachers and students, regardless of background or context.
Yes, that's really important.
It's impressive how they've woven this thread of equity throughout everything they do.
Yeah.
It's not an afterthought. It's a core value that shapes their entire approach.
I agree. And I think their commitment to transparency is also worth mentioning.
Yeah.
They're openly sharing their learnings, both the successes and the stumbles, so that the entire field can benefit from their experiences.
It's refreshing to see an organization that's willing to be so open about their process.
It is.
It shows humility and a genuine desire to learn and grow alongside others.
Absolutely.
Right.
It creates a sense of trust and encourages collaboration, which is essential for any kind of meaningful change to happen.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the RPPL report.
We have.
From their work on debunking myths about professional learning to their focus on personalized learning and their innovative approach to research, it's clear that RPPL is a force to be reckoned with in the field of teacher development.
I couldn't agree more. It's inspiring to see an organization tackling such important questions with such rigor and thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that their work will continue to have a ripple effect throughout education for years to come.
That's a great way to put it. They are creating ripples of change.
Right.
And it's exciting to think about the positive impact they're having on teachers and students across the country.
Absolutely.
And for our listener, I hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the current state of professional learning and the exciting innovations happening in the field.
I hope so too. It's an area that deserves our attention and support, and I encourage everyone to continue exploring the resources and insights that RPPL has to offer.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations of the latest research and ideas in education.